Hey everybody, Dan Strong here with Excel VBA is Fun. We have a question today from Nam in our Microsoft Excel Ninjas group on Facebook. And Nam is asking, he has these 5 criteria, and let me show you a picture here. Basically, he has 5 shapes, and every time he chooses an option, he wants that color to remain unchanged. So for example, if he clicked on this option 3, all the other ones would go gray. If he clicked on option 2, that one would remain blue, but all these would go gray in this option group. And then if he clicked here on the green one, then this would remain green, and then this one would go gray instead of blue. So all the other ones in the option group. So we're going to try to work on that and see what solutions we can come up with. If you'd like to download this demo, please join us for this conversation on excelvbaisfun.com/ninja. So now we're in the mockup.xlsm workbook, and what we're going to see here is if we click on one of these shapes, they are flowchart process shapes, but they have essentially the same few colors. They have this little shape format: yellow, green, blue, etc. So that's pretty easy, and they're all in the same shading and the same formatting. So what we can do is actually just record a macro for these, and what I'm going to do is I'll show you the first one, and then I'll pause the video because you'll know how to do it by then. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on the developer ribbon. We're going to record a macro, and I'm going to call this one make shape gray. And that's pretty much all I'm going to do. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to make it gray instead of whatever it currently is, and I'm going to stop recording. I want to see if the resultant code is actually what I want. Let's hit Alt F11 to go into Visual Basic Editor and check our code, and this is our new workbook here. It's called Mockup, and we're going to double click on Module 1 here. So here's Make Shape Gray macro. Basically, it found the shape on the active worksheet, and it did a bunch of fancy stuff here. There's an array of charts, but we only used one chart, so we wouldn't even really need this range array thing. We should just be able to use the sheet name .shapes and then just give it the name of the actual shape instead of the range and using an array of shapes. And we don't even need to select it in the first place. So we're going to clean this up in a second. Then in regards to what was selected, meaning the shape, all we really need to do is take the shape range .shape style and tell it we need preset 39. Alright, so all these are probably just going to be presets. What we're going to do is clean this up and make it just one line of code, because we can take the particular sheet, so instead of saying active sheet, I want to be specific so that I can even potentially run this from another sheet even if the sheet was hidden. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the sheet 1, instead of the name mockup, I'll say sheet 1 dot, because that's the code name for this sheet. I could change that if I wanted, but for right now I'm going to say sheet 1 dot. And the next thing is what comes after the active sheet is .shapes. So we're accessing the shapes objects, the shapes collection, and then this one is called flowchart blah blah blah. I'm not going to type that. I might get an error for a second. Let's just copy and paste the name of this. So there's the name of the shape. Then we're not going to select it. We once again want to ignore the selection and the select thing. We just want to take everything after that selection nonsense. So blah 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 .shapes .shape range shape style, all that equals MSO shape style preset 39. So if we try this, we're going to try this out on a different shape. We're going to try it on, let's see what this one is called, flowchart process number 5. So we'll try it out on process number 5. So let's change that to the number 5, and let's watch behind us and see what happens if I hit F5 to run this Mac. In fact, I can deselect it and hit Alt F11. Now I'm going to press the play button or just simply hit F5. I'm going to hit F5, ready. And of course, we're going to get a little error here. So let's work through that really quick. This happens whenever you work with shapes a lot, because it's not as intuitive as one might think. But one simple solution that I find that helps when I'm working with shapes, when I'm working with worksheet labels that are not ActiveX, but just like the regular form control versions and other kind of form controls, they're just wonky, and because they usually have this invisible thing that you need to address. So right after the shapes object, you're going to usually need something that starts with O. It's object, or let's just type .o. So you need OLE format usually, and then .object usually. I would just remember just .o and then .o and whatever comes to the top. Yeah, so .ole format, and then I press .o, and it's going to probably be object. Let's see if this works. So let's see, I'm going to hit F5, and that usually covers a multitude of problems. It's just by doing the .o, and then taking the first thing that pops up. So I'm going to hit F5 now, and bam, there you go. So it's stupid, but these things are kind of hidden, so the recorder doesn't reveal that that's needed because it's buried in that bullcrap code. But anyway, it's working now, so that's good. So now we've got the ability to make a shape gray. Now, let's make this more dynamic. What do you say? I hear your enthusiastic agreement, so let's do it. What we're going to do is we're going to make this almost into a function. We're going to make this dynamically accept a name. So we'll call this SHP name, so the name of a shape, and then we can feed it. We can spoon feed it a name of any shape that we want. Instead of taking this hard-coded shape name, we're going to make it have the ability to take the SHP name. So I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. I'll just put it in the immediate window because I want to get rid of this hard-coded thing. We're going to take whatever they feed into this code, into this variable SHP name. So I'm going to change this to SHP name. And now it'll take, of course, I'm not spoon feeding it what sheet it's going to be on. That would be a further step of automation. But right now, we're going to make shapes gray only on sheet 1. It's just a given for our demo. So sheet 1.shapes and then whatever name we spoon fed it. So let's test this out first of all. So we're going to make a sub called test, and we're going to run this macro here. I'm going to copy and paste it. Make shape gray, and we're going to do, let's do a flowchart. Process, there's probably one called 3. So if we feed this into it, I'll just show you that really quickly what it looks like. I'm going to hit F8. Now we're going to run this macro, make shape gray, but we're feeding it this particular shape name. So if I hit F8 now, it loads that up, but SHP name contains that particular shape, and that particular shape is now going to become gray. Let's wait, let's watch and see which one that is. I'm going to hit F8. Oh look, this one was called shape 3. Cool, so it works dynamically. All we have to do is feed it the name of whatever shape that we're dealing with. So that's going to be pretty dang useful. Now we just need to get the other color names. So I'm gonna record a few of these, and I'll be right back. Okay, so what I did is I just recorded it all in one macro called orange, blue, yellow, green, and that way I could go through and just see this one is called orange, this preset 37 is apparently blue, yellow, and green, etc. So all I have to do now is kind of put these MSO shape style preset into our little make shape gray function, and then we'll just basically rename that to the appropriate colors. So copy and paste. This one, we'll call this one orange, make shape orange. If I could spell it, it'd be perfect. And then we'll just go ahead and do this no time like the present. So copy and paste the orange one. Let's expand this just a little bit here. And then I'll do, of course, the same for the other 3. Now, be careful when you're renaming using non-unique names. You want to go ahead and rename those as quick as you can so you don't start to get errors. Blue, yellow, green. Alright, cool. So the blue one, I labeled these so I wouldn't forget what order I did them in. This one's blue, 40 and 42, 40, 42. Now, obviously, we should test one of these. So I'm going to double click here. I'm going to say make shape. I'm going to hit Control Spacebar to autocomplete. Now, let's go ahead and autocomplete the yellow one for flowchart process 3. I'm going to hit F5, and we see that it worked. It turned it yellow. That is cool. Alright, so what we're going to do, the first thing that I want to do is actually label these appropriately, and I want to label them, or actually give them a new name, each of these shapes, based on what color they should be, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to group these into different groups, and then we're going to dynamically program a macro that will sniff out what the calling shape name is, and then it'll figure out what group it's in, and then it'll loop through that particular group. And but what's going to be cool about this is it's going to automatically know the name of the color, because we're going to rename these. Instead of flowchart process 3, which doesn't tell us anything, we could be able to utilize this by calling this one OREN1, orange yeah, so oren1. We're going to have a 4-character code at the beginning. I only do 1 because this is criteria 1. And I might name this one oren2 and etc. oren2 and hit enter. This one, for example, is going to be blue1 because it's in option group 1 at the top. Yell1, 2 L's because it needs to be 4 letters. GREE1, and finally gray1. GREY or AY. Apparently both are okay to use. And we'll do the same for these, and I'll be right back. Alright, so we just got done with the last one. So they're named yellow 2, this one is blue 3, green 4, etc. So we're going to utilize that, but first what we have to do is create a macro that's going to figure out the group names of these. So what we're going to do now is create a macro that is going to figure out which of these buttons that we clicked using the application.caller. That'll give us the name of the shape. Then we're going to know which group it's in, whether this group or this group or this group. Because these are actually shapes, they don't actually have a group name. They're not option buttons where they have that capability where we just slap a name on them. So what we're going to, we could put the group name, I suppose, in the name of the shape in the back end or the first 3 characters or something. But the way I envision this is I'm just going to go ahead and group them, and I'll show you how. So I'm going to control click on all these in the first group, right click and go to group and insert a group. So now they're encapsulated in a group. I can drag it all as one unit, but I can also edit one at a time. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a macro and assign it to each of these buttons. So let's go down to the bottom here. In fact, let's go ahead and make a new module. Just keep it clean, or we'll call this mod group codes or something like that. But I'm going to create a macro, and we'll just call this shape colors or something like this. It's going to control the shape of the colors based on which one we click on. So it's going to have a lot of things that it's going to do. The first thing is that it's going to detect what the actual calling shape is, because we're going to use the same macro for all these buttons. It has to know which button called it. For example, was it yellow 1, was it blue 2, was it green 3, etc. In order to do that, we're going to create a variable, and we'll call this shape name equals application.caller. Now this doesn't work if you just hit F5 because nothing has called it, not a particular shape or object. But if you call it from clicking a shape, it'll tell you the name of the shape and it'll put it into this right here. So let's try that. We're going to go ahead and just put a breakpoint either here, or we put the word stop somewhere on our macro. It doesn't matter. But we're going to right click on one of these shapes, assign a macro, and I'm only going to look at this workbook, not all of my personal stuff. So shape colors is the one that we're going to run. And so when I run it, I'm going to click here, and it already ran to this point. But if we take a look at what application.caller gave it, it fed it the name oren1. So we clicked on the button orange1. If we clicked on a different one, application.caller would have given us a different name, which is really going to be convenient. So what we're going to do now, we can go ahead and stop our macro. I want to plan out some things. First of all, I want to plan out shape1. So we're going to declare shape1 as you guessed it, a shape. The reason I did that is because I can now use IntelliSense to have a drop-down menu for all the cool things I can do with shape1. So after we get the name of the shape, let's go ahead and do this after the breakpoint. So I'm going to say set shp1, and it's going to be equal to sheet1 dot, and we're going to use the shapes, but we're going to use the name shp name, which is a variable that contains either gray1 or orange2 or whatever. It'll automatically dynamically pick that up from the caller, so whatever button we hit, it's automatically going to know, and it's automatically going to put it in this. The reason I put it in this is because if I do shp1 dot, it has IntelliSense. Why? Because we declared this thing is going to be a shape, so now it has all the cool IntelliSense drop-down options that a shape specifically has. All right, that's why we did all that. Now the next thing that we need to do is we need to figure out, essentially, the shape knows what group it's in, but we don't know the name of the group in order to loop through all the objects in that group. So that'll be our next task, is what group am I in? So we're going to try to get the group name, and we might get an error, so we'll have to troubleshoot that. So we're going to say group name equals, how about shp1, so that's the current shape that we've clicked on, that we just trapped into a object variable called shape1. But now we want to get the dot parent group dot name. So the parent group's name is going to be, you know, group 11 or group 15 or whatever it is. It doesn't matter what it's called. What it matters is we can trap it and we can do something with it. Now, the problem is, well, sort of a problem, is if you don't have a group, which for whatever freak reason, maybe you forgot to group something, you would find that out obviously when you're testing your program. But just for fun, we should probably troubleshoot that and make sure there's no error. So I'm going to click on this. We have the shape names called orange1 or oran1 technically, and we're going to set that into an object variable called shape1. So now we've done that. We want to get shp1.parentGroup.name. If you hover over it, you can see it's group 2. So there is obviously a group. It's grouped in a group. And if I hit F8, it's fine. But what happens if there's no group? So if I click here, I'm going to right click actually. I'm going to select the group itself, right click and ungroup it, and we'll see that there could be errors if you accidentally did not have a group. So let's go ahead and click this again, and we got the name orange1, we got it into a shape, but if we look here, there's no parent group now because this shape is not in a group. That's going to lead to an error if I hit F8, so you don't want to see that. You don't want your users to see that. Obviously, you should have grouped it, but whatever, there could be an error, or something could have happened. So I'm going to hit debug. Simply, I'm going to say on error, resume next. That is a quick fix for this, and it's really the only one I've found because you can try to get the parent group.count or items.count or whatever, but it's still going to give an error if there's no group. So this is the best way that I found, is just simply say if there's an error, skip over that error and don't pop up an error. So if I hit F8 now, even though it should give us an error, it's not going to because we told it to hush up for a second. And now all we need to do is say if that variable called group name, if that thing equals empty, then we're going to go ahead and exit the sub. That means we're not going to continue any further if there's no group. If we're not in a group, we're out of luck because we cannot loop through it and, you know, make everything gray except for the current item. So that's not going to work. All right, so that is how we'll do that. We'll hit F5 or click the run button to just finish that one off. So now we are able to determine whether there's a group. Typically, if we designed it, we know it's going to be a group. It's going to be fine. I just wanted to throw that in there. So I'm going to right click, and I'm going to control click on all these. I'm going to group them again. We can continue. Right click, group these items, boom, now we have a group. All right, so good, so that's grouped. Now we can continue on. Let's click on our macro and get to where we were at. So we have a group name, it's called group 23 in this case, but what we want to do now in a second is we want to group through, or excuse me, loop through each of those items. So here's how we're going to do it. We're going to do a for each loop. It's just the simplest thing that we could do in this case. So we're going to say for each, and we could use any variable name that we want. How about shp in sheet1 dot the shapes group once again. In this case, we're going to take the shape called group name because a group object is also a shape in the shapes collection. So we're going to take the group name. In this case, it is what? It's not going to tell me until I finish out a valid line of code, but I think it's group 23 or something. So we're going to take that particular shape dot all of its group items, and that we can loop through the group items of a group, which is really helpful. Of course, we need to say next shp or next whatever thing that you put here. You need to say next that ends the loop. Now we're going to hit the tab key. And we're going to do, basically, there's a few steps that we need to do. What I want to do is just an if-then statement. If it starts with YELL, then we're going to make that one, you know, yellow whenever we need to. If it starts with blue, we're going to make it blue, except whenever they need to be gray. So we just need to determine that. The only one that really needs to be turned to its default color is the one that called it. The one in this case that called it is called orange1. That one needs to actually be turned back to orange, and everything else just simply needs to be gray. So let's go ahead and try that out. So I'm going to say if the shp name is equal to SHP, which is the thing that we're looping through. We're looping through each item, each shape in that group. So the first one will be SHP, and the next one will be SHP, but it'll have a different name, same variable name. But if the one that we got earlier is equal to the current one that we're looping through, then we're going to go ahead and colorize it, whatever the normal color should be. And then I'm going to say else or otherwise. If it's not, then we're going to make it gray because it's not the one we clicked on. So everything else in that group is going to be gray. I'm going to say end if, and let's get started. So let's go ahead and loop through this slowly using F8. If you're on a Mac, you'll need to hold Command Shift and the letter I in order to step through. It's kind of stupid, but that's the way it is. So here we are. We're going to colorize it. So let's see what we got going here. So SHP name is orange 1, but the current shape, I should say dot name, excuse me, the current shape dot name is gonna have to be gray because it's not equal to whatever the orange one. So we're gonna use our make shape, I don't remember how it was spelled, so control spacebar to autocomplete. Make shape gray, here it is, spacebar, and then what is the shape? Yeah, it is SHP dot name, and that is how we're gonna make this dynamic. So let's take a peek and see if this works for us. I'm going to just scooch this up a little bit up to here. So let's compare this again. So that tells me it actually is not going to the else. It actually is going here, but we just don't have any code for that. So at this point, we need to actually just make the if-then statement that determines what color needs to be what. So let's go ahead and do it. So I'm going to say if, we really need the leftmost 4 characters. So YELL or ORAN or BLUE. So if the leftmost of the particular string called shp.name, the leftmost 4 characters of that, if those are, let's just say yellow, then we're going to say make shape yellow. Here's the make shape yellow macro that we did. It was really convenient that we did all this earlier and we made those functions or those macros that would just automatically make anything that we want yellow or blue, because now we can just use a one line of code and get it all done. I'm going to say else if the leftmost blah blah blah. Let me just say 1 then. The reason I put 1 then is so that if I clicked away without these things, it would give me a stupid error. I just want to click away so I can simply copy and paste this. So I'm going to say else if the leftmost whatever equals, let's say blue, then we're going to make shape, control spacebar, make shape blue, there it is, and shp.name. Else if, and I'm going to paste, and once again, green, then we're going to make shape green, make sh, there it is, make shape green, shp.name, and from here it's smooth sailing. We need to do orange, so else if paste equals oran, make shape orange, and finally the last one is actually we do need to determine if it's gray because the option number 5 is almost always gray. So honestly, we should probably use a darker gray than that, or just a different color. But for right now, it's okay. It'll test out okay. Else if the leftmost whatever equals gray, then we'll maybe do a darker gray later, but GREY. And then, of course, we're going to make shape gray for shp.name. And, of course, we will get an error if we don't put our end if at the end of this if-then statement. We should try this out. So let's see here. If the current shape is equal to the one that we actually clicked on, then we need to determine what color it needs to be. So let's see here. Looks like it's orange. Yeah, it was oran 1. So we're going to make shape orange. I'm not going to step through that one. I'm going to hit Shift F8, so it'll skip through that. You notice over here it made it orange, but now we want it to loop through the other group items, and they're going to make them gray. So Shift F8 to run that. Shift F8. Oh yeah, Shift F8 and Shift F8. Cool, it's working. So now what we need to do is just assign the same macro called shape colors. I'm going to Control C, copy that to the clipboard, because now we just need to right click on all these other macros and simply assign that same macro, shape colors. Right click, assign macro, shape colors. This is so much better than making individualized macros for every single shape because that would take forever and it would be annoying. And then if you had to make any changes, it would also take forever. So this is dynamic. When I say something is dynamic, that means that it's going to just work no matter how many more items we add to it, no matter how more complicated we make it. So let's go ahead and save our progress, by the way. Let's click here. That one actually was meant to be gray. I hate that that's gray. We need to change that, but whatever. So this one's green. This one's... So that's going to bug me. I'm going to go ahead and change this to a different gray. So I'm going to go ahead and record that. Gray other. We'll call it gray other. I'm going to go ahead and right click on this. Now I've got the one I want selected. Let's just do like a different shape fill color. Like, I don't like gray. I think I'll do purple. Even though they're called G-R-E-Y, we'll do purple just because it's going to be different looking. So I'm taking a look at that. Gray other. All right, cool. So we've got this shape range.fill, and there's some other things that you got to do. I don't care. That's fine. So here's my make shape gray macro. Instead of all this nonsense, we're going to just use that weird fill stuff. I'm going to paste it here. So instead of with selection dot whatever, we're going to say, I see the word shape range is here and the shape range is here. So honestly, everything from here on out, I'm going to get rid of, and I'm going to get rid of the selection dot whatever. So everything after shape range, meaning the word fill, is fine. And I'll just say with this whole thing dot fill. And that should actually convert pretty well. So let's try this now. We changed the make shape gray. Oh, cool. I forgot we were already using that for something else. Let's see how many backspaces this will let me do. Cool. We'll call this one make shape gray 2. And now we'll paste that. Everything to the word shape range is good stuff, so we'll just copy and paste it there. And now we have make shape gray 2, which we will only use for the 5th buttons over here. So let's go to the group module. So if it says the word gray, we're going to use the make shape gray 2 one, because that's like gray buttons that were supposed to be regular gray. Honestly, that's just going to be purple. So let's try it now. It should be fine. Everything's going to be gray, but this is going to be purple. Cool. So now we have like these legit option groups. And obviously you can assign other stuff to these macros based on the name or position or what group that they're in. But dynamically now we can change these to make everything gray except for the selected option. And it looks really good. Literally, to make this work, all I need to do for the other groups is group them together after I just group them together. So I'm going to control click, right click, and group. And then I just need to assign that same little macro on all of these. So right click, assign macro, shape colors. And so now it should work no matter which group that we're in. If you haven't checked it out yet, go ahead and take a look at our Excel Ninjas group. We'll have a card up here as well as in the video description. It's excelvbaisfun.com/ninja. We'll hope to see you there. We've got lots of free resources and free courses and materials for you.